Hello and welcome to Community Forum. My name is Roy Cohen. I'll be your host, back from a summer vacation and rearing to go again. So we have an exciting show lined up for you. It's my pleasure to welcome in Frank Crimmins. Frank is a very active Stoughtonite from a very active Stoughton family. And Frank is running for governor's council. And we're going to start off by saying, welcome, Frank, to the Community Forum show. And can you give us a little update of what the Governor's Council is? I'm sure that most people watching the show have no idea whatsoever what the Governor's Council is all about. So that's going to be up to you to explain
it. Okay, thank you, Roy. Thanks for having me. The Governor's Council is an 8-member body that was put into our Constitution by our founding fathers to make a check and balance on the awesome power of the elected governor. As you know, the Massachusetts Constitution preceded the U.S. Constitution, and our founding fathers wanted to make sure that our governor did not have the unchecked powers of a king coming from the country we had established, soon to establish our independence from, in our U.S. Constitution. So in our Constitution of 1770, which, or 1780, I should say, which preceded the the U.S. Constitution of 1787, we had a provision for 8 people that would give advice and consent to the governor on certain duties like appointing judges and clerks and people in the judicial system. So by way of example, you know, in the U.S. Constitution, when a president nominates somebody to the Supreme Court, that nominee goes before the U.S. Senate for advice and consent. And if the Senate approves by a majority vote that nominee, he or she takes their seat after being sworn in on the U.S. Supreme Court. In Massachusetts, our Constitution preceded the U.S. Constitution, and the duties of advice and consent fell upon the 8-member body called the Governor's Council. In the Constitution, it was called the Executive Council, but it's been morphed into what we now call the Governor's Council. So the most important duties are approving people for judicial appointments as clerks, magistrate in the court system, as well as the awesome duties of approving pardons and commutations to people that have been convicted, as well as other duties with the Department of Industrial Accidents, the Appellate Tax Board, and a lot of other duties, including appointment of notaries public. So it's a constitutional function. I'm running in District 2 to be one of the 8 members on the Governor's Council. It's a very important job. Thank you.
That was a quick synopsis. I appreciate that. I mentioned that you're from the well-known Crimmins family in Stoughton. And how about telling us about your family, your business life, your experience?
Well, thank you. I grew up in Stoughton. I have been here all my life. I had occasion to go to Severian Brothers High School. After high school, I had a good fortune to win a scholarship to go to Harvard College. I graduated from Harvard College with a degree in 1977. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer at that time. I got a chance to go to Suffolk University Law School and the evening division. I worked days in my father's real estate and insurance business. And when I got out of law school in 1981, I started a practice in Stoughton. And I got active in town affairs and civic affairs and fraternal affairs and political affairs. And the year after I started a practice, I had the good fortune of getting elected to the what was then called the Board of Selectmen, as you know, because I served with you. It's now called the Select Board, but I served a 3-year term from 82 to 85. I had the occasion to run and was lucky enough to get elected moderator in 85. I ran for 7 more consecutive 1-year terms. And then in 1992, then Governor William Weld appointed me as a district court judge. I was an associate justice of the Stoughton District Court by way of my appointment. And I served for 17 and a half years. The first approximately 9 years of that, I served in the different district courts in Massachusetts and from Boston down to the Cape and Islands. In the last stretch from 2001 to 2010, when I retired from the bench, I served at the Stoughton District Court. I'm married. My wife Joanne and I have 4 children that we brought up in Stoughton. We have 4 grandchildren, and that's a little summary of what I've been doing.
Sounds like you're a busy man. What am I thinking? Why are you running for the governor's council? You don't have enough to do.
Well, we live in challenging times, Roy, and our institutions are under attack. We live in a divided country, and one of the biggest challenges is the attacks on the rule of law that support our judicial system. What makes us different from any other country is the constitutions that we live under. And under our Constitution that was put together in 1787, we had a 3rd branch of government where we as a people decide to live under the consent of the rule of law. We agree to abide by those decisions. And when people think those decisions in the court are not fair, they undermine that rule of law because people lose confidence in that. And this particular job is important because we need men and women who are the best to serve the important jobs in the court system to make sure people have confidence in that rule of law. So I am running to make sure that in Massachusetts, we have the best judges and clerks and people in the court system that we can have, so people will support the rule of law, support the court system, and make sure that our democracy stays the way that it has been for years and years. I believe in our Constitution. I have the Massachusetts Constitution right here. I have the U.S. Constitution right here. And as you know, when we were sworn in to the Board of Selectmen, when people are sworn in as sworn police officers, when someone becomes a judge, when somebody becomes a clerk, he or she takes an oath to support the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and he or she takes an oath to support the Constitution of the United States. And there are some people that seem that they don't quite understand what's in the Constitution. Those rules are for everybody, and you can't have people that pick and choose who those rules are for. Those rules are for everybody. And today, a lot of times we have certain people that think the rules are for one group, but not for another group. And it erodes the confidence that people have in the system. And I support the Constitution. I support our rule of law. I want men and women that know how to follow the Constitution, and they will keep the integrity of the system intact. And that's why I'm running. We have a lot different world out there than we had when I was growing up, raising my kids. And my grandkids are living in a whole different world, just like yours and everybody else's.
How many members of the council are there?
Eight,
And this
eight
is
districts
from all over the state, correct?
in a state that has over 7 million people. Each district is made up of over 900,000 people. The district I'm running in, District 2, is comprised of 37 communities. It's the size of 5 state senate districts. It's a big district.
Interesting. And you're going to make what kind of a change? You're going to go in you're going to win this election, and you're going to go in there, and they're going to know you're there, correct?
I think they will, because at the hearings that take place at the governor's council, I plan to ask questions in the capacity of somebody who vets these nominees for these positions. There's only one time you get to ask somebody who's about to be a judge or a clerk questions about their qualifications and what they think. That's at the hearing before the governor's council. When a governor appoints somebody, that is done in confidence. When the committee that a governor appoints on their judicial nominating committee recommends someone to a governor, that is not a public hearing. There's only one public hearing. And that public hearing is before the governor's council, and it's open to the public. As a matter of fact, you can go online and go to mass.gov, follow the link to governor's council, and watch the hearings of people nominating to be judges and clerks and see what happens at those hearings. And a lot of times you don't hear anybody even ask a question. And if you want the public to have confidence in the men and women who are occupying those positions, the public has to be able to hear that these people are qualified and what their background is that makes them qualified, both by their areas of competence and whether or not they have the temperament to perform those very important roles.
My assumption is that the governor's council can get involved with appointments, both before and after. If, in other words, if somebody wants to get a judgeship, or somebody wants to get a political appointment, does the governor's council get involved with recommendations?
No, the governor's council is the body that vets that candidate for suitability for the position. It's an executive branch body, but its job is to give advice and consent to what the governor is doing. If somebody wants to apply for a judgeship, the governor's office will have an announcement through its judicial nominating committee as to how to apply for that particular job. And people apply there. Then when a governor proposes somebody for the position, that person goes to the governor's council for the hearing. And it's the role of that council to decide whether or not that person is qualified for that job and give its advice and consent. And if the candidate gets a majority vote, they go on to get sworn in. And if they don't, that nomination is withdrawn. It's defeated.
Let's assume that you become a counselor and you have a judicial nominee that comes before you. What criteria are you looking for when you evaluate a judicial nominee?
Great question. First of all, the competence in the area that they're applying for in their position, and second, whether or not they have the temperament. With respect to competency, there are 7 trial court departments in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have a district court, like the court I was on. There's a housing court. There's a land court, juvenile court, probate and family court, superior court, appeals court. The competencies to serve in those areas are different. So you have to see what somebody has done that demonstrates that they have the capacity to perform those competencies well. Then you have to see whether or not they have the temperament for this type of job. You have to leave your political philosophies at the door. This is a nonpartisan job. This isn't a political job. That's how the Constitution was set up. There are three branches of government. This is supposed to be the non-political branch. If you want to change the law, you run for the legislature. This is different. The rule of law applies to everybody. So you have to see if somebody is the type of person that can do that. Now, for example, even back in the day where I was involved in town things with you, I was a moderator, for example. When you go to town meeting, you're neither a proponent or an opponent of an article at the meeting. You have to apply the rules of parliamentary procedure to make sure there's an open debate, you have a vote, and then you move on. In a similar fashion, a temperament for the job is when people are before you in the court, you're not an advocate. That's what the lawyers do. They advocate for each side. On the criminal side, we have the prosecution, and on the defense side, we have a defense attorney. On the civil side, you have a plaintiff, and on the civil side, the other party is the defendant. A judge is not an advocate for either one. A judge has to know what the law is and find facts and apply the facts to the law in a case where the judge is the fact finder. And of course, in a jury trial, the jury is the fact finder, and they apply the facts to the law that the judge instructs them on. So there's a lot involved in that.
Frank, I know this is a tough question to ask because it's time for you to toot your own horn. But what makes a good judge?
Great question. A good judge is somebody that can work with the interested parties in the courtroom and have people leave that courtroom knowing that they were heard. They don't always have to agree with the judge, but they have to know that there was a process that was followed and they had an opportunity to present their case. And once a judge finds the facts and applies those facts to the law, a decision is made. And a judge has to be fair and has to be proportionate. On a criminal case, you have to know the difference between somebody who's a bad actor and somebody who just had a bad night one day, but they're not a bad actor. You know, on civil things, you have to know what the difference is between the burdens of proof and how to apply damages in a fair way. I have, in a judicial career that spanned almost 18 years, I did hundreds of jury trials, thousands of non-jury trials, thousands of motion hearings. Anybody that felt aggrieved had the right to appeal my decisions. That didn't happen too often. So over the test of time, I think I showed I was a fair judge, that type of thing. That is one way to view it. When you're a judge, you have a microphone in front of you the whole day. The whole day. That microphone is on every time you're in the courtroom. So you have to make sure that you're heard and you choose your words carefully and make sure people know that you're listening to them and you're giving them their hearing. And I think I showed over my career that I did that. And I think because I did that, I was in the game for almost 18 years as a judge. I've been a lawyer since 81. I'm in my 43rd year. Because of that, I know what it takes to be a good judge. I know what it takes to be a good clerk. I know what it takes to be a good public servant. Because of that experience, I think that's a unique position. If you want to know what is important as far as the qualities to be a judge. It's not a bad thing to have someone who was a judge. And that's what I offer to this position. And that's why I think my candidacy is different from my opponent.
And you have an opponent this year. I believe you have one other one that you're battling with for this position.
I have an opponent, yes.
What is the what's the responsibility for a judge besides what you talked about? We to sit in there and make the right decision that affects a client that comes before you. What makes what responsibilities do you have as a judge? I know that's getting a little bit away from the subject of you running for governor's council. Like, what responsibilities do you have as far as the physical structure itself?
Well, there's, for example, I was a judge in the district court. Not only was I a judge, but I was the first justice at the Stoughton District Court. I also had been a acting first justice at the Fall River District Court, which at the time, I believe, was the fourth busiest district court in the Commonwealth. But when you're a judge, whenever he or she is in a session, is responsible for any case that is called in that session. So in district court, we had jurisdictions over, in the criminal side, everything from restraining orders, mental health petitions, misdemeanors, felonies that could be tried concurrently with misdemeanors. We had constitutional issues. We had probable cause hearings. We had discovery motions. We had trials. We had all the things, and a judge is responsible for all those decisions. And if the council are aggrieved by a decision, they can appeal your decision. On the civil side, there's a whole range of subject matter jurisdiction that goes to the district courts, and a judge is responsible for that case. When you're the first justice at a court like I was, you have to interact with all the parties there. I worked at a courthouse that was owned by the Norfolk County Commissioners. I had to be able to deal with the Norfolk County Commissioners to get improvements to the building. Inside the courthouse, there's security officers that are in the front providing security to the public. There's court officers. They're in a separate union. The clerk's department is under the supervision of the clerk magistrate. Very important position, clerk magistrate. Those folks are in a separate union. The probation department is in a separate union. You have the associate probation officers, assistant chief, the chief, those people in the court, they're in a separate union. On the attorney side, the elected district attorney has their own assistant district attorneys in the building. They have their victim witness advocates in the building. On the defense side, you have private counsel that people retain privately. And then you have appointed counsel through the bar advocate program that provides legal services to people that cannot afford to hire a lawyer on their own. So when a judge is in that courtroom, Roy, in addition to the public, in addition to witnesses, in addition to police prosecutors, you have to work with an awful lot of people and make the thing work. And when you're a first justice, the reason I was appointed as a first justice is my chief justice thought I had the ability to do that, and I think my track record showed that. So when you go through that, you learn what it takes to be a good judge and a good clerk, because you had to do that to make the whole thing work. You know, when you're a judge in a court, the judge doesn't hire the clerk, the lawyer, the DA, the probation officer, the security officer, the police, the witnesses, whatever. but the judge has to make the whole thing work. So there's a lot of to that, and you need a certain skill set to do that, and do it in a way where everyone buys into what we're doing on any given day, which is to make sure that justice is served and everyone gets a fair hearing and they get enough time for their case to be heard.
Yes, that answers that question. What makes you more qualified than your opponent?
I've been there. I have been there. I've been a judge. I know what it takes to be a judge. I've worked with clerks. I know what it takes to be a good clerk magistrate. With all due respect, my opponent hasn't heard cases and made decisions. My opponent hasn't conducted jury trials. My opponent hasn't conducted bench trials. My opponent hasn't ever had to be the one that made the decision. My opponent never had things that had to be appealed because she was not the decision maker in those particular type of cases. It's just completely different. With all due respect, everyone has the right to run, but as far as on qualifications, I would submit I'm the most qualified candidate in this particular race.
With all that's going on in the world today, what are people telling you that they're concerned about with the within the judicial system?
Well, when you go around and you campaign, you hear the same things I'm sure you hear. People are very concerned about the migration crisis and what it's done for ever. When you get out there, people are concerned about the cost of living, inflation, these type of things, the attacks on the rule of law, and those type of things. When you're out there, people want to make sure people are accountable, to make sure the courts work. They are concerned about that, and people want to make sure they can be heard, that people are accountable, that we support the police, that we give very tough assignments for in law enforcement. We have trouble hiring in many departments, police to provide level services because so many men and women are leaving police departments because they don't get the support of the public. So these are concerns that people have. And we need to have a judicial system where we apply the rules of law to everybody fairly, that we hold people accountable, that we make sure that we support the people that we act to perform the important jobs of law enforcement. And that's what I hear by people when I'm campaigning.
Any thoughts about what's going on in Springfield, Ohio?
I think it's awful, but I think that has been going on for a long time. This migration crisis has gone everywhere. We are in a sanctuary state, as you know. We're a border community now. We have that in the town we live in. We have that in our schools. We have that in the 2 hotels that you know are full of migrants. We took in a population late last year after the budget was already prepared. This is going on everywhere. And what is happening in Springfield, Ohio, with the gangs taking over housing things are awful, and that can happen anywhere. We have to make sure that doesn't happen. We have to make sure that we stop the issue with illegal immigration. There's nothing wrong with immigration. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody here is an immigrant. Just depends what generation. But we were legal immigrants. We vetted people to make sure that they didn't have backgrounds that would make them suspect, and we vetted people to make sure diseases were out of control. probably most people come into the country, they want to do it for all the right reasons and have a better life for their family. But even if it's just 10% that aren't in that category, that's an awful lot of people that have been put in the country and put us all at risk. People are concerned about that. And I hear that. And I hear that right in Massachusetts, because we have become, as you know, a sanctuary state where migrants want to come here because of that, because of the benefits we have. And as a result of that, the state budget has been affected, and there are certain things that are going to be left with less funding. Schools, police, fire, the roads, bridges, all those type of services are going to be at risk because of the money that has to go towards the migrant situation.
That is it's quite the controversial situation, for sure. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing? You've told us a lot. Anything we might have missed? Like,
thank you for the chance to be with you, but I think this is a very important position. I am running for a job to give back. I don't need the job. I'm at the age where I'm not looking for an appointment as a judge. I'm not looking, for a new career that way. I'm a practicing lawyer. I have a practice in Stoughton. I do business as ab initio elder law solutions. My practice is good. I'm doing this like all of us because we all have to give back. This is something where I have a skill set where I can give back. I want to give back because my kids, my grandkids, just like yours and everybody else's, are living in a tougher world. And one of the most important positions we can have is to make sure that our traditions of the rule of law are maintained. And I believe in the Constitution. I think we ought to have more instruction in it. I think we should have more civics and U.S. history taught in schools and all that. And I'm running for this job because Governor's Council plays a very important role in that whole process in the third branch of government. The judicial branch is what makes this country different from every other country in the world. And I want to make sure we keep it that way for our children and their children and everybody who's here today, to make your life better, because without that, we're all at risk. We're all subject to more crime. We're all subject to everything else that flows from that. But I appreciate the question and the chance to be with you today. And I would ask the people of the Stoughton community and the rest of District 2 for their support. I think I've had a track record of serving in Stoughton. As you know, Roy, I served with you on a board of selectmen.
Sure.
I was a town moderator for 8 terms, 7.5 years, because I got appointed in 92. I was appointed a judge by Governor Weld, and I served for 17.5 years. The only reason I left that was because the kids having to go to college, needed to make a pivot, just like a lot of people, make sure it could give them a chance to do that. I served in 2022. Governor Baker appointed me as chairman of the State Ballot Law Commission. I served on that till earlier this year, where I gave up that spot so I could run for this spot. I was a town manager in the town of Stoughton from 2010 to 2012. I was a town administrator in Avon from 2014 to 2018. I have a track record of service. I think I've demonstrated a capacity to serve the public, and I want to help out on the Governor's Council where I think I can make a contribution. I would be the only person on that group of 8 that had been a judge, and I think that's a needed vantage point to assist the Governor's Council in making sure we have the best men and women to serve in those very important positions.
Well, we miss you as town manager, I'll tell you that.
You're kind. You're kind. Thank you.
Frank, if people are watching and they want to get in touch with you, what's your telephone number?
You call me 781-344-9665. We're on the website. You can go to electcrimmins.com. We have a campaign committee. CTE stands for Committee to Elect FT Crimmins Jr. at gmail.com. We have a Facebook page. We welcome your comments. We'll get back to you if you have particular questions. Love to hear from you, and I would appreciate your support on November 5 if you vote on Election Day, and I'd appreciate your support if by mail if you're of a group that's going to vote by mail or the in-person early voting. However you choose to vote, would be honored to have your vote, be honored to serve the people of Stoughton and the people in District 2.
Frank, I wish you luck. I followed you for, what, 40 some odd years in your various spots. I've had the pleasure of working with you on the Board of Selectmen. I just wish you well. I think you're a heck of a guy and well qualified for the job, and wish you well.
Well, thank you, Roy. I appreciate the service you've done to the town. I hope your present listeners know that about your service and how you serve the Board of Selectmen. But thank you. I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, we wish you well, and thank you very much for being on the show. We look forward to getting you on again once you're elected.
Thanks, Roy. Thank you very much.
Find out how it's going. Okay. Thank you, and my love to your family.
Thank you. And to you. Thank you.
Bye.